Elevator systems. Bowen family systems theory in brief for a life of learning. Welcome to Season 4 of Elevator Systems. This is our traditional pre-season episode where we give you a sneak peek of what to expect this season. I'm Dixie Vandersluys. I'm a professional counselor, a member of the Faculty of Living Systems, and the creator of Elevator Systems. Joining me as always is Katie White. She is the executive director at Living Systems and a couple and family therapist. What do you think? Season 4, Katie?
I am excited. I cannot believe we're in season 4. It seems sometimes we joke that last season was very, very long, so that one did not seem to go by fast. But this is amazing that this little engine that could keeps chugging along.
Yeah. I think we're like almost 50 episodes. I think that's where we're getting close to.
We need to have the champagne ready for our 100th. There we go. And I'm excited coming off, we hope that you had a chance to tune into our professional lecture at the Bowen Center where we really talked about, the podcast from its first iteration in your brain to, some of our thinking that went on throughout. So I hope that people got a chance to visit that, or if not, maybe that's something to do before you jump into the season.
Yeah. I can link it in the show notes. It is currently February 2026. It is a time, it feels slightly tense in the world. I'm not sure if you've noticed, Katie.
Well, I will say, with the exception that the Olympics are on, which I think does give everyone a little functional boost of that good, like, togetherness, competition.
Right.
But yeah,
a little solidarity. Yeah. But I thought it seemed like a good time to talk about some hot topics. So our theme for the season is we're going to be thinking about mild, medium, and hot topics, and what makes something a hot topic, and how is Bowen theory helpful in addressing some of the tension, different levels of tension in these topics. So what are your thoughts on all this, Katie?
I think, a hot topic, I think this is going to be good for me in the sense that I'm a bit nervous to bring on some of these hot topics and think about it. But, so it's a useful challenge. I ski and I always say these useful challenges where I stop on the top of a mountain and look down and I say things like being brave makes us stronger, right? Doing these things that scare us. But I think it's going to be interesting because I think one person's hot topic is not another person's hot topic. I mean, I think, this will vary, depend on context and environment, who you're in a conversation with. I might say a little bit more about that later. And what kind of things stir me up personally. So I'm looking forward to thinking about maybe learning more about my own individuality and togetherness through this episode or this season.
Yeah, the idea is like, what are the things that you don't talk about at the dinner table because it gets people riled up? I remember getting the eyes from my mother. I don't know if you ever got the eyes. I also remember giving the eyes to my children.
And there's a little diversity because my dinner table was an encouraged place to bring up things of debate. So, we would have these, how do you think differently? Sometimes get a little emotional and heated about it. But I think that's the part I'm interested about this season is, just putting these things out there and getting where are people going to go with them.
Yeah. And I guess Bowen theory would say it's less about the content of the topic and more about the process around it and how high anxiety, level of differentiation, and those intensifying patterns.
And how do we manage ourselves in this, right? I know that you and I have different ideas on different things. So how do we manage ourselves in the face of someone who might think differently than us or the same as us, and what comes out of that? How do we, how do we move forward around that? So that's what I'm excited about, is just to think with people. And hopefully we really get an emotional process through this, because I think that's the part of it that you were just hinting at. It's not just about the content, but about that underlying process of how do people manage that tension in the system.
Yeah. So some of the topics we'll look at this season, we've got the classics of like sex, politics, and religion, money, other things like sports, AI, mental health. Yeah, I don't know. What are you looking forward to or dreading in, in these conversations?
I think I'm looking forward to just bringing on some guests and hearing their thinking. I'm excited about some topics. Like I'm excited to talk about sports, and I think the usefulness and thinking about managing yourself in a system around that. I think politics I'm probably less excited about. We'll see.
Right.
Is there one that you're really looking forward to diving in on?
Well, I mean, our first episode is going to be about polarization and individuality and togetherness, sort of like a broad intro. And I've just done lots of thinking about that. So I'm looking forward to that. And I will say, I probably wouldn't pick, I can't think of any topics because I'm probably a little bit scared of many of them. I've had a realization recently is that I like to be Switzerland. I like to be neutral, in the middle of the sides. And then I've thought, am I scared Switzerland? Or am I
Yeah.
thoughtful Switzerland? Am I like, I'm just afraid to speak up on what I think, or am I legitimately neutral? So
I so appreciate that. I mean, I think from the thinking I did around the professional lecture, one of the things I thought about in preparing for this was, when we sit on the podcast, just like now, like I'm talking to you, I'm talking to maybe you and another person, but there is this other element of big question mark out there, which is the audience, the one or two of you that decide to listen to us. And how does that contribute to the thinking? So, we're in this small space of managing ourselves in the face of one or two other people, but it's also, the other part of what's it like for this information to land out, and how does that connect in many ways to these interlocking triangles. I was thinking about it almost like family therapy with one person, right? If I'm doing some work with one person, how that reverberates into a system. So just a curiosity about how these podcasts and especially covering some hot topics, might land differently than things we did in the past. So I'm just interested in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my I don't know what you call it. How I end every episode is do some thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
As you go out. And so it's not about telling people what to think or how to think, but just how to observe. And yeah.
And how do we manage ourselves in the face of that?
Yeah. So you wanted to do a couple of plugs for what's going on at Living Systems and something new, speaking of things that make me slightly uncomfortable. So you go ahead, Katie.
I thought that was a great segue. So yes, I always want to make sure that, one of the things that has been lovely is that this podcast is produced and supported with Living Systems. So to make sure that people know that there are resources within Living Systems and the rest of the Bowen Theory Network, if you want to take these ideas and go further, if you want to have, at Living Systems, we have family of origin groups where you can explore these ideas. We have lots of coaches to work with people individually or as a family. We have some introduction to Bowen Theory groups that people could join in on. And we'll talk more about our conference that's coming in the fall. And I suppose the exciting thing in Vancouver is Living Systems will be hosting the International Conference on Bowen Theory in July of 2027. So more to come. But to get to the thing that's going to make you very uncomfortable, one of the things about running a podcast is there is a lot of behind the scenes work, right? Dixie makes a lot of efforts to edit and make sure we're not saying silly things like what is the one that normally gets wrong?
Well, it's Bone Theory, Bone is over and over again. My name autocorrected to 60, the number 60 the other day. That was a new one. So lots of mistakes, despite the program being very, very helpful with the transcript.
Yes. Yeah. So as much as, we really have a principle that, our time on the podcast and preparing for the podcast is, a service that we're doing, part of our volunteering efforts to really think about the theory. But the editing and the things that go on behind the scenes, I have a principle that I'd like to, as much as possible, financially support that. So that's why we're asking this season for the first time for your help, that we are connecting with this program called Coffee, where it's the idea that you could buy us a coffee, either in a one-off, or you could contribute monthly. And then that will go to continuing to be able to make this, high quality content look as beautiful as it does, and not keep saying bone theory. So we really are putting that out there, that we would appreciate your support in helping behind the scenes, making this run.
Yeah, I will link it in the show notes. So usually in these preseason episodes we do fun facts. Today I thought we would do funny facts. And should I go first, or do you want to go first?
No, please go first.
Okay. So
funny fact with hot topics,
yeah,
right?
Funny fact around the hot topic. So this is related to politics. I once almost got my ballot taken away in a federal election when, as I was walking to the ballot box with my vote in hand, I jokingly, but definitely seriously, yelled across the room to my boyfriend, who became my husband, that he better not vote a particular way. Just sort of across the room. To which the Elections Canada people said, "You are not allowed to speak once you have your ballot in hand, and we could take that away from you." But I got to vote, and
weren't arrested.
I was not arrested, and I've learned to not persuade voters. In fact, my youngest daughter, she was able to vote in the last election, and I worked real hard to invite her thinking, despite the fact that her mother may have some thoughts on what a good vote is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's the politics one. But I actually thought that, I don't know that I'm going to give a specific example, because I will spare my family the details. But I thought so many fun stories that I imagine everyone could think of around how you talk about sex in your own family. And I think, this is one that, so many stories. I said my mom was the person that went into my school and talked and did the birds and the bees sex ed talk, and what that was like to have your mother up there, communicating about all these things when my face was red probably the whole time. But I think, that's what I would encourage everyone else to think about. What's their fun and funny story about, the ways that sex gets talked about or not talked about, or,
Right.
shut down. The ways that I think about what shows do I have my, nearly 12-year-old watch with us or not watch with us about these things going on. So I think that that's going to be one of the things that always makes me laugh, is thinking back to those funny memories of how sex was dealt with and managed in my household.
I've recently learned from my adult children that humor about sex is not the same as education. So
I did
my best.
That is a fun fact.
Yeah. So anything else you want to add about the season? Did we get all the things we needed to cover?
I think, I always invite, if people have some ideas of things they want to see, or people that they'd want to see, we always invite you to connect with us.
Super. Okay, episodes will be released every 2 weeks, because I'm going to give myself a break and not release a new episode 18 straight weeks. Starting at the beginning of March, every Tuesday or every other Tuesday. March 3rd, we'll be talking with Barbara Lehman about polarization and individuality and togetherness. And I think it's going to be a fun, challenging season, and I hope people do their own thinking as you go out into your relationships. This podcast is produced by Living Systems, a nonprofit organization in Vancouver offering counseling and training programs in Bowen family systems theory across Canada.